Were the signs of 2015 a 7-year warning pointing to 2022? Hey, this is T.W. Tramm, author and End Times Watchman. My normal routine is to post prophecy studies on Facebook, which I've been doing since 2015. However, because this topic is so important, I also wanted to do a short video. By the way, all my writings can be found on my website, theseasonofreturn.com. Or you can find me on Facebook by typing in T.W. Tramm. So let's dive into this topic. If you've been following End Times Bible prophecy for any significant period of time, you know that 2015 was a pivotal year, a time of heightened expectations. Based on an assumption that 1967 was a Jubilee year, it was calculated that 2015 was a Jubilee. Moreover, signs in the sun, moon, and stars seemed to confirm that 2015 was a Jubilee. In the space of only 7 months, we saw a one-of-a-kind solar eclipse on the biblical New Year, which was also the first day of spring. A once-in-2,000-year occurrence of the Bethlehem star conjunction, the sign that heralded Jesus' first coming. And blood moons on Passover and Tabernacles, the latter of which was a super blood moon visible above Jerusalem. Despite the apparent convergence of Jubilee cycle and signs, no event befitting a prophetic Jubilee occurred in 2015. Why? The simple explanation, I believe, is that the Jubilee follows the 7th sabbatical year in a series, and 2015 was only a 6th sabbatical year. What do I base this calculation on? Daniel's week's prophecy gives us the formula to calculate the Jubilee. In verse 25 we read, "From the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince comes, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Most scholars understand verse 25 to be fulfilled at Jesus' first coming. They add the 7 and 62 weeks and count from Artaxerxes' decree allowing the Jews to rebuild Jerusalem to arrive at 27 A.D., the year Jesus was anointed Messiah. So by a reckoning of sabbatical weeks, the 7-year cycles underpinning God's calendar, Daniel predicts the year of Jesus' first coming. Amazing, right? But here is something to think about. There is no logical or biblical reason to assume Daniel's week's prophecy addresses only the timing of the first coming. In fact, given that the prophecy encompasses God's whole plan of redemption, which entails 2 appearances of Messiah, it is reasonable to assume that the timing of both appearances would be given. This is why some believe the 7 and 62 weeks are mentioned separately to allow for the calculation of both the first and the second advent. Which set of weeks applies to the second advent? Since 7 weeks denote a Jubilee, and the Jubilee points ultimately to the redemption and restoration at the end of the age, it is the 7 weeks. With that explanation in view, back to Daniel's formula for calculating the Jubilee. We are told to count 7 weeks from the restoration of Jerusalem. This next part is key. Because the modern restoration of Jerusalem occurred in June 1967, after a portion of the current sabbatical week had already passed, a count of 7 full weeks could not begin until the start of the next sabbatical week, which is 1973. So the 7 weeks correctly begin at 1973. A sign that 1973 is the correct start point of the 7 weeks is the fact that Israel was, that year, attacked by an Arab coalition on Yom Kippur, or Day of Atonement, the day the Jubilee is declared by a trumpet blast. Counting from 1973, the 7 weeks end in 2022, our presumed Jubilee. So rather than 2015 being a Jubilee, it turns out to be a 1-week warning of the impending Jubilee. The God of the Bible is known for giving 1-week warnings. Noah was told to board the ark 1 week before the flood began. The Israelites circled Jericho for 1 week, blasting 7 trumpets before the city fell. Pharaoh was warned in a dream of 7 healthy cows and 7 sickly cows that a famine would begin after a week of years. On the subject of cows and sevens, prophecy watchers will recall that in sabbatical year 2014-2015, around the Feast of Trumpets, 2 cows made news for being born with number 7s on their heads. In prophetic circles, the 2 cows with 7s were interpreted to be a modern version of the sign given to Pharaoh, a warning about 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. 7 years after the cow signs, as sabbatical week 2022-2029 is about to begin, supply chain disruptions and empty store shelves portend a shift from a time of abundance to a time of scarcity. To sum up, it appears the timing of the true Jubilee, 2022, has been hidden or concealed by an incorrect assumption that 1967 and therefore 2015 were Jubilees. Incidentally, the assumption that 1967 was a Jubilee was reasonable. The June 7, 1967 restoration of Jerusalem fit well the Jubilee theme of land returning to its original owner. Reinforcing the Jubilee theme, a then 50-year-old Rabbi Goren sounded the shofar at the Western Wall, proclaiming the liberation and redemption of the Holy City. Even the duration of the war during which Jerusalem was restored, 6 days, shouted prophetic fulfillment. And so did the date, 6/7/1967. However, and this is key, Daniel's week's prophecy does not tell us that the restoration of Jerusalem will occur in a Jubilee year. It tells us to count 7 weeks after the restoration. Counting from the start of the first sabbatical week following the 1967 restoration of Jerusalem, we arrive at 2022. The signs of 2015 thus turn out to be a 7-year warning. 1-week warnings are common in Scripture and indicative of God's merciful and long-suffering nature. During the past 7 years, countless non-believers have come to faith, thus being spared from the tribulation to come. And many believers have been awakened to watch for and proclaim the soon return of Jesus. It's interesting to consider how, without the buildup of 2015 and the signs and revelations since, the body of watching believers would not be nearly as large, awake, and informed as it is today. Like any bridegroom, Jesus desires to gather an eager bride, and stirring up millions of slumbering Christians is not something that can be achieved overnight. Not only does a 7-year period make sense as a time of preparation for the bride, it corresponds to the recurring eschatological theme of waiting on the Lord. In the parable of the virgins, 10 virgins go out to meet the bridegroom, but he is a long time coming. In Matthew 24, a significant period of waiting is implied as the master of the house warns his servants to not assume he is staying away. In Luke 12, it is hinted that the Lord may show up late or in the final watch of the night. Could a long time coming or late in these parables refer to a 7-year period? It could. The important takeaway, however, is that despite the perception of delay, we are assured that Jesus will arrive on time. God says in Hebrews 10, "Do not throw away your confidence, for in just a little while he who is coming will come and will not delay." There is an appointed time for the gathering of the church. And though it may seem, due to the ramping up of signs and expectations over the past 7 years, that Jesus is late, he is not late. He will arrive at the precise moment planned since before time began. No one knows the day or hour, but we do know that God measures time according to his 7-year cycle. It is no coincidence that the Lord has, in recent years, raised up teachers, given signs, and uncannily timed market crashes to draw attention to his sabbatical and Jubilee cycles. What is thrilling and awesome to consider is that if our reckoning of these cycles is correct, we are, in 2022, about to enter into a 7-year period that will forever change the world. Thanks for watching. God bless, and Maranatha.